Hello friends, welcome to V Lounge. In our international leg of a V Lounge, we are here in Dubai to discuss about the healthcare sector. We have our esteemed guest, Dr. Moimin Abdelghany, CEO of Zahra Hospital, who would be talking to us and taking us through his journey and discussing with us the various experiences that he's had and his take on the future of the healthcare sector. So I would first of all like to thank Dr. Abdelghany for taking time out and for this brief meeting with us. So Doctor, if I may ask, how did it all start? How did your professional journey start?
Well, thank you first for having me, and I would like to send a welcome message to all the MBA students in your esteemed university. See, it starts usually with a passion about doing something, about growing to something, and I had the passion to become a doctor, a physician. It's been since my very early childhood that I looked at this noble profession and wanted to become a member who can relieve sufferings.
Does your family have any medical background?
No,
how did the passion come about?
To be honest, my father is a general in the army, and I was not at all from a family with a medical background. I think I was the first doctor in my family. But I had that passion from the beginning, and my father wanted me to pursue engineering, and I felt no, I would like to pursue medical and become a doctor, and I'm glad that I'm now a doctor as well.
So when did that trigger happen? Would you remember? Would you recall?
Yeah, I think it was early in the childhood, and during my studies and my school days in the primary school and so on. The change that happened though is after I graduated, I felt that there is still. I became a doctor. I graduated back in 1990. And I did my master's in anesthesia and intensive care, and I was fully practicing anesthesia and intensive care for more than 20 years in my life. But then it's the second wave of change that led me to think about what's beyond my immediate profession, what's happening in the healthcare as a bigger arena, and what's going on in the ecosystem as well. I was very much focused with my patients and the medical duty I'm doing, but then I realized that in order for that to happen, there should be some much wider scope of looking at things. And
so you wanted a more holistic kind of an approach?
Yes, I've always dreamed of looking through the lens of others. I needed to understand where others come from. So when you see the patient themselves, when you see the hospitals or healthcare facilities as a system rather than just a physician-patient relationship, when you see the nursing, the admin staff, the labs, the radiology, and the interaction between these different components to come at the end and provide good patient care, you realize that it's much more complex than the direct doctor-patient relationship. So I started to pursue some deeper understanding of this.
So you embarked on the journey from being just a practitioner to trying to understand the entire gamut of healthcare as a sector. How did that happen, and where did that happen?
Actually, there was some gaps between this level of understanding between the caregiving teams and the non-caregiving teams. Normally, or in many instances, hospitals and healthcare systems are run by non-medical persons.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel that there might be some disconnect here when some non-medical person try to work and direct the organization somehow. Of course, they have the good backgrounds, but the problem usually comes in the alignment with the caregiving team. So when I started to
look at it more from only a business perspective?
Yes, from a management and business perspective. But there are other components as well which you should be aware of, and some limitations, some difficulties at the bedside, which you will not understand it unless you practice it. And these are the things that can make a difference between a medical and a non-medical person running the organization. But when I did that, I realized that I don't have enough education or experience to run a business. because it needs actually good business acumen to understand and run the business. And that's where I started to pursue additional qualifications and additional education and additional training on healthcare management and business. So I started back in 2004 pursuing some postgraduate diploma in healthcare quality. And then I looked at a master's in healthcare management, healthcare business and management. And then I looked at a board in healthcare quality, financial management for non-financial people, because you need to, at the end, it's a business, you have to understand the finance. And then marketing and business development, IT and the updates in the IT, people management. So the sort of things that you did not normally learn during your medical career, and put them together with the medical background to have a proper mix between the management and the medical fronts.
So you were taking these courses while you were still practicing?
Yes, while I was still practicing, I tried, and then while I was still started to pursue my management career, I continued education. To be honest, I continue education on and on. That's something very interesting in our field, because in the medicine, every day new things come. You need to be updated, you need to be always updated. And also in management, new things come. And if you're not updated, you're outdated. In business also, you have to be updated. So when I was in the chief executive post, I pursued my managing healthcare delivery executive leadership at Harvard. I'm pursuing another executive leadership program at Harvard, senior executive leadership at Harvard. Even though I'm already well established as the chief executive, I still feel that there is much to learn and more scope. And the more you learn, the more you benefit your organization. And that should go across the board. So learning and development is something that we should never stop.
So I think an important aspect for our students to take from this is that learning is an ongoing process. It doesn't stop. Even in his position as a chief executive, he would still go ahead and do his course in Harvard, which is truly commendable. Where did your journey exactly start? Did it start in Dubai?
I started in Egypt. I was born in Egypt, and I did my medical education in Egypt. I practiced in Egypt for a while. I did some practice in Germany as well. And then I went to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where I spent almost 3 to 4 years. And then I moved here to Dubai. So throughout, I've been doing between running hospitals and healthcare groups between Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and here. And I always looked at how to go through that, because I started as a chief medical officer, running medical staff only, and then I grew as a chief operating officer to look at the operation, even the non-medical component of the operation, and then as a chief executive officer to run both the entire health system and the ecosystem as well. So it has been between startups, fresh starting hospitals, or turnaround hospitals that have not been performing and they want to turn around into the performance. And the performance normally comes as business performance, financial performance, in addition to physician performance and clinical outcomes. So it's varying organizations now for that role.
And did you feel there was a difference in how things operate back home in Egypt and how things are in the UAE in terms of how the hospitals are run? Is there any differences?
Yeah, I think because I looked at systems in the US, I looked at the system in Europe, and I looked at the system in the Middle East. I had some at part of my career, I was working as a VP for a firm which starts hospitals in India as well. So I've been exposed to the Indian healthcare system, the US healthcare system, the healthcare system in the Middle East, including Egypt, KSA, and the UAE. And the one thing I noticed lately is that the East tends to be more physician-driven healthcare. So it's driven by the physicians. Physicians have the upper say in what's being done, while in the West it's more standardized and structured. Physicians do have their say, but the patient is a big part of it, and the system, the ecosystem itself, plays a big role in it as well. Actually, in the UAE, this is changing now, because there are more systems in place, there are more standards that are being implemented. Most, if not all, of the hospitals are internationally accredited, so they follow a common standard to what's being done in the West. That's why I feel that the UAE has very good potential to grow healthcare and mature the healthcare, because the standards and the systems are now being in place. And that's different between the rest of the many of other countries in the Middle East. Yeah.
And lately we've seen a thrust from the UAE government in terms of the medical insurance and making it compulsory for...
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So do you think that has played a big part in how the healthcare industry is now?
I think I fully support this, because it is the sustainability. When you bring sustainability into the system through funding and reimbursement through a mature health insurance scheme, that brings structures in place. So it increases the demand, and it structures even the demand and supply, and it helps maturing the health system. Now, they moved, that move was not easy. The health insurance was mandated in Abu Dhabi in 2006.
Right.
To move to Dubai, which is like 120 kilometers, it took them 10 years to move to Dubai in 2016. But that makes the system, when it's implemented in Dubai, very mature. And it does not happen overnight. It takes time. And at the same time, when they started now to think about having more sustainable reimbursement system rather than a fee-for-service structure, which is already existing, into more bundled payment, something that you can know that a certain diagnosis will be reimbursed with this certain value. So you're shifting this responsibility of responsible care to the healthcare organization itself. So they need to manage the care of the patient within a certain amount of a certain cost. So they will manage their cost, and they will manage their quality, and they will manage their outcomes, because at the end, outcomes is the thing that brings patients to the organization. So
it's kind of a win-win for...
It's balancing liability and risks, and it's more cost conscious and cost effective for health systems to adopt the DRG, or they call it diagnosis related groups reimbursement, rather than current fee for service. And this is the move that Dubai is moving towards. So that's why I'm saying in this part of the world, the system is maturing very rapidly towards best practice.